Hello everybody, welcome to my demonstration session. Today I'm painting in acrylics and I picked up a photograph I've taken in North Wales, part of the Ogwen Falls, part of the Ogwen Valley. Gorgeous river, drops down quite lovely white water river, beautiful mountains at the back, the glitters. I love the very soft light green of the trees, of the bushes here, and in contrast with very cold mountains, kind of grayish cold rocks. I've got that lovely silvery water here. Nice elongated composition, so I'm really excited to develop it today in acrylic. So on my palette I have some white, yellow, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, crimson, violet, ultramarine, and phthalo blue. And I'll get started with these colors and we'll see if I'll need any more. Right, so first of all, let's get started sketching. Now, because I have a lot of rocks and mountains, I want to get started with some cooler colors today. So I'm going to go for a bit of white and ultramarine, just a dab more white, and tiny bit of ochre. This will make it a little bit warmer, but it's not overly well, it's actually will bring me close to the grays. If I would have used a different blue, let's say phthalo blue, that would have made it much more greener. Okay, I've got the gray here, grayish color. Right, so I have quite a high horizon here, so probably a third, maybe a bit lower for the horizon. I've got a lovely V shape, just an off-center V shape for the mountains. Okay, so something's going to come here. That's a nice peak for the glitters. Okay, and then we'll have some more rocks and trees going up on the right. One here, gonna have some more edges of the mountains. Okay, leading to Travan, and lovely foggy area is going to be here. So I might play with the silhouette of these shapes at a later stage. So I'm looking for that light shape silhouette, and now I'm going to find out the pattern of the river, where it's going to be. So if I were to divide my photograph, I'm quite happy with this composition, so I'm more or less going to take it as it is. So if I divide the composition into half, that's where the river starts, kind of the borderline. A little bit comes in and out to the right hand side, but mainly straight in. So if that is my halfway through, so the water, so the rocks are going to be staying somewhere here. I've got my tree is going to be roughly somewhere here, so that water edge is going to be going meandering a little bit up and down, and that will help me to draw some of the larger rocks as well, find their shapes. Okay. And let's find an overall direction for the right hand side. So I'm trying to look for the silhouette of the white pattern. Kind of what shape would it be if I were to cut it out with a pair of scissors? Yeah, so I'm looking for that. We've got some rocks here as well, so I might cut out those dark spaces here as well. It's almost a straightish line. Okay. And some smaller rocks further at the back. It's quite steep section where a lot of the water coming so rapidly. It's probably, if not 45 degrees waterfall, but very close to that. Okay, some more whites might be here. And some extra rocks. If I'm working into the light and shrinking some of the sizes of the rocks, I might work in that in dark afterwards. Okay, that's good. I'll pick up my larger brush. Quite like that darkness. I quite like the tone. I want to have most of the water painted that way before I start working into further details. I think that would be a good block of tone and color. So a small dab of ochre with my ultramarine and white. Okay, tiny bit more that balance. So it's not too blue, but it's not too green either. It's that fine balance of getting the gray. Okay, if this is going to be slightly darker, no, it's about the same. I thought this might come out a little darker than my sketchy lines. So let's just do it. It appears reasonably light against a dark violety background, but we know the more colors will be applied, the more into place this color will fall into. Okay, so it's easier for me to see shapes than just outlines. So let's bring that light in here around the group of rocks. Okay, and close to tree. Okay, just running out of paint. Let's use a little bit of what I've got on my brush. Straight here. Okay, that's going to be this rock. Somewhat going to be going around. Okay, I'm going to let it dry and probably adjust it as I go. Also, it does look a little bit abrupt here, but I can see a little bit of water between the trees, so I might deliberately expand it somewhere here as little lights. That's quite good. And while I'm on these colors, I can go for some sky. So again, if I'll go for a little bit similar to start with, mainly ultramarine, tiny dab of ochre. Here I can go a bit more stronger into ultramarine. I want to have a bit of depth to the sky somewhere here. Again, against the dark background, it will appear nice and light. And now I can change this color to more fresh ultramarine and white. Still not pure. Some of that gray is still present, but it looks tiny bit lighter and tiny bit more bluer. Okay, that's nice. And now I'm gonna have some light. looks like some beautiful sun coming behind the clouds. So that's almost like a foggy end, and the light is standing strong behind the mountains, almost in some places as an outline. Okay, just working into this light, disappears, again gets a little wider and blends, and again gets somewhere slightly lighter. I think when the color of this first layer dries, I think it would be a good idea to put a tiny bit of phthalo blue. Might be a little bit disruptive now. We'll see. And then slightly fresher blue here, and quite a lot of white on that side, on the right hand, sorry, on the left hand side. So I'm just blocking it for now, having some softer edges. I'm going to paint a little bit further into the shape of the mountain, because I'm focusing on that sky, the color there, the light there. So I slightly lost the silhouette of the mountain, so better just carry on with the sky and come back with the exact silhouette later. Some lovely fresh white merging, that will have a nice effect later on. Okay, that's a foggy edge. Tiny bit of extra light. Okay, possibly something behind the trees there. Okay, bits of lichen as well on some of the stones around the waterfall, so I'll see maybe some of that light will be caught by the lichens. We'll see. Okay, I'm not too sure about that round shape. Let's just soften that slightly. Have something moving there rather than, okay, that's a bit better. Just bring it slightly over and blend that darkness. Okay, I did like it quite grayish rather than bluish on part of it, so let's just bring that grayish back. Slightly darker version option for it. Okay, here we go. Gives that lovely depth. Photograph sometimes flattens some of those clouds, or even on the foreground. On the photograph, I can actually see a reasonable amount of variation of tone for the river, but on the screen it's harder for you probably to see it. So let's hope I will show it in my work and it will be understandable there. Okay, that's better. I'm happy with that now. So a little bit of extra color, nice depth, possibly even finish the sky, but we'll come back to it. Now I'm going to keep the waterfall as it is. So what I've done two positive spaces, two light spaces. So now I need to start working a little bit more into my details for the mountains. So I'm still sketching. This time I'll add a small amount of violet and ochre. And if this gray is about, I'll use part of this gray. Tiny bit more white so we can see the lines. And now let's explore some of the big shapes. But lovely rock standing out. Right, where it's going to be somewhere here. So I'll find the space for it. Direction. How tall it's going to be. There's another rock somewhere here, but I might shrink it gently. This rock, we'll see. Okay, let's find some other rocks around in comparison, so then I can make my final decision if that's where it's going to be before I move it. Right, so this one is going to be here. And it comes out, right, I think it might be a little bit shorter. Might be a little bit shorter. Here we go. But it's okay for it to be slightly wider. Take loads of lines. Another way of working with my shapes is bringing some slightly darker grays. So I have my ultramarine, I have my violet and a dab of ochre again. This will give me a nice darker gray. Maybe that's how I can structure my painting. I'll see those shapes better. Then fiddly small lines. Okay, so that's another shape. It's so much easier to work with than okay, these are very dark rocks, so I'm going to keep them out. They probably, obviously, they're not the same color as my violet tone, but they will have that similar darkness partially on them. Okay, something in the water here. Okay, and some lovely, almost a rubble of stones, a pile of them. Okay, that's a good diagonal here, going all the way to the top. Well, almost all the way to the top. If some of my rocks appear slightly more violety browny, I'm going for more violet and ochre. Maybe slightly lighter version in the background. Otherwise, there's no point of working with this color. I can leave the background color then. Right, that's a very good one. It's reflecting a bit here. Let's see these shapes. So when we have a lot of things in a painting, loads of details, loads of rocks, plants, everything's happening, everything's quite overwhelming. Simplifying things is the only way forward. Whether it is simplifying what's light, what's dark, that's what we've done with the water and the sky. simplifying. Okay, let's find these blocks. I don't know if I want this very light rock. I think it will look better if it will be all lower or not going to be there at all. Okay, I might leave it out for the moment. Okay, and then we'll have a border of a part of this valley is finishing and the higher valley begins. So we'll have some of the standing shapes of the stone there. And okay, these ones gonna come and stay here. Okay, lovely. So we've got some of that gray violet now here. Anything else of a similar color? Can work into that later. Some major group of grays is there. And let's have a look if a similar color, just a little bit coming through on the mountains. I think it will have a bit more warmth in there because it's further back. I think as a starting point, having some of that color will be good as well. And then I can add a small amount of crimson and ochre to that. So that becomes slightly warmer. To have more of ochre. And the valley is warming up here. Dab of ochre and white. And again, some extra light is developing. Have a lovely shadow of cool tones as well. Okay. So have a bit more green rather than ochre. Just checking if any other rocks might have similar reference there. Okay, maybe no for now. Now I'm quite keen to explore some green. So let's have some ochre mixed with phthalo blue. So I have some nice strong green. I wanted quite fresh green, almost. It could be autumn. I think actually it was early autumn, but it's also got that feel of it could be fresh greens of the spring. So I could interpret it quite like that sunny, happy green color. Just reflecting here for so that's much more. Okay, that's okay here. Right, so let's have it as big shapes and big thinking areas. Right, so we have a nice tree here overhanging the waterfall. So I'll do it roughly somewhere here. It's clinging to the edges. Got some lovely twisty tree trunk. Lots of transparency behind it. I've got something a bit more solid here. I'm not sure which tree is this at this moment. I haven't looked enough. Looks like a possible tree trunk there, or part of the rock in there, but the leaves are of the lower level, lower layers. So I'm just blocking it as a group, moving forward to the left, a slightly cooler green, maybe even a dab of crimson. I might expose mountain more than it is in the photograph. We'll see. I quite like seeing that volume of it. I haven't got the right shape for it yet. Okay, that's where some of this will work. So the water will be behind these trees. And again, behind we can add another darker tree. I'm adding some violet to it. Okay, as a big area that works. And then on the edge here, we'll have some lovely oranges on top of it, but there's an overall color that will make a border for us, a differentiated area from one shape to another. And below we definitely need more ochre and some fresher green. So we're mixing fellow blue with ochre and white, and even more ochre and yellow, as white dilutes the strengths of the color. I'm gonna get rid of some of these dark tones, but I will bring cooler shadows shortly. So if some of it is merging here a little. It's maybe a bit of similar or even darker tone. Quite a lot of paint on my brush, so it's not mixing quick enough. I need to persevere. Okay, so that's this section filled. Might go even darker at the base, because we'll have a shadow there. There'll be something growing over there. Some leaves might be growing over, covering the base of this rock. Okay, that's reflecting quite a bit. Just hold on there. It will dry out and we'll see that color better. Okay. Again, a slightly more violet with a green. For the rock on the right hand side. It's quite similar to the other darks I have here. Some of these violet grays, bluey grays. Okay, something's going to happen there. And now the foreground green has slightly more coolness to it. Okay, finally, I mixed everything on my brush and I've got a dull gray. Something's going on behind my window. Okay, tiny bit more white. Let's put some more on my palette. Tiny bit more fresher green, fresher lighter green for the rock on the foreground. I think that's about right. If I'll give it an overall placement, I might decide on the texture later. Okay, so we can see that green now. Okay, let it dry. Okay. Just spotted some more lighter purpley gray rocks right here. Top of this one. And some of the green is exposed in the gray. So I will be working around this angle, checking the texture, keeping an eye on the texture. Okay. Right, and let's have a look now at some of the beautiful indigos. So if I use some of ultramarine, double black. Very nice and intense in color. A small hint of violet in it as well. So some lovely dark tones. Just work for some of them. Now my brush does feel slightly big for the shapes, but it will keep me to think big forms. And not work into too many details at this stage. Okay, I can adjust some of the areas where the water will be breaking the rocks, some unevenness, uneven edges. Okay, this one is quite a dark rock, but it appears much more lighter because it's underwater. So I'll come back to that color. Let's have a look what we can see dark. It will have the water coming even closer now. It's easier for me to see where the white will need to spread further. And now my shadows are exaggerated in this darker blue, indigo. But it gives a nice graphic silhouette of shapes. Okay, a bit strange shapes here. I think I need a smaller brush. They'll look a little bit wobbly instead of lovely geometric shapes. They're too repetitive. Okay, let's just leave them to dry. Get back to this area. Another big block of tone. If I can't see the shape, if I'm struggling, let's say some of these ones started to be not as maybe pleasant in their silhouettes, I squint my eyes and I'll start seeing much more simplified colors, much more simplified shadows. Okay, let's come out slightly lighter. Must have just mixed on this palette something with extra white. Right, there's another one here. And that one might be lighter. Okay, we can have little rocks next to it. A little light, a little dark immediately. There's nice dynamics. Okay, that's where the dark shadow is going to be. Right, well, I've got this grayish color. Can I put it anywhere else? Okay, I can put it on this stone. That actually tells me that's in the wrong place. Unless this one will have to be slightly further up. Okay. Don't count individual rocks. We can work in the bigger shapes. Okay, that's good. Again, let's back to more indigo. This time I'm using a bit of phthalo blue. Phthalo blue with some black. tiny bit of blue, so white, so we can just see the color. And that darkness could come to the edge of the river. Just go slightly lower so there's not as much water showing. Okay, the edge again, darker, that's how we know it's the edge. Possibly other rocks lying there, maybe it's too dark, but I'll just keep it there for now. That's a better shape. Size. Nice diagonal. Okay. I'm going to start filling the rest of my violety colors of the background. Now you'll be saying, why did you paint it if you're just covering all of it? It did help me earlier on, early stages, even still now, to have that warmth and darkness within the background. But also some of the gaps of this violet will remain, and that will support some of these cooler shadows. Okay, a bit lower. Okay, the water will need to come a bit more further here. Okay, got it. And even a little pool of water here. So that's would be exciting to add a bit more water here as well. Quite like that diagonal here. Going, bringing everything together. Right, let's define the shape of the waterfall. Let's find more curves, more twists, and so far I have a lot of sharp edges, contrast edges. Eventually that will need to go in a few places, and also by adding more white I can start painting. I might need a small brush for this. Start adding some spaces. Kind of the shadows of the river, where the rocks are slightly transparent. Okay, we'll have some different angles there as well. So it's like steps. There will be a range of rocks as steps behind here, behind the water. So I'm subdividing, looking for my shadows on the water. Some water's going to be here. A little pool. And I wanted to tidy this corner and shrink part of the rock because again some shallow water. No, not shallow, but shallowy edge of this specific rock allows water to come up and disappears again. It pops over as it bubbles. And bubbles around here. Okay, I'm gonna let it dry. It's a little bit similar in darkness, and I'll top up a variety of tone there. Right, let's do a nice shadow for this group. Let's find the water going around it as well. It's partially the shadow, it's partially proximity of the rock underneath of these areas. And that is the sharper edge. It's another little pull. So it's not just perfect steps. It constantly changes. And some shadows around here. So it's giving me similar type of pattern of the rocks, those shadows, quite squarey marks. Got this stone slightly smaller. Okay, now it's part of the river. I'll just add more highlights around it. And these little stones will have some shadows as well, otherwise they wouldn't be protruding on their own. Okay, let's double check now from a distance, but a few similar shapes here. So when I'll start working with the lighter tones, I need to pay attention to them. So first of all, let's have slightly lighter now tone. Okay, can't see that one. So same gray blue I had for that water. I'm just going to make a lighter version of it. My brush holds a lot of pigment, so I keep pressing on it, taking the extra color out and mixing it with extra white. Okay, might be light. Let me just double check it's not. Okay, maybe a little bit too light for me. Too earlier on, so let's get back to something in between this and the previous darkness, because I want to have some in between tone. The water is going over it. And cascading down. So I just want to soften some of these edges so they're not going to be too sharp in places. And start toning down some of the larger gaps. Slightly lighter again. Let's work for a tone lighter. Where my earlier gray was my first gray, some of the color is thin and slightly transparent, so I can see some of the violet background through it. So I'm going to work partially over these areas to increase its highlights, unless if it looks good in place. Okay, that's could be here. Some thinner streams. Some nice sparkle of light. And this light will be getting stronger and stronger. And I might add even a hint of turquoise with it after this darkness. When this dries, I'll be able to see and apply extra color. Just bring slightly more fresher whites just to find that glistening effect. On this corner, almost I'm considering keeping it as a focal point, so that contrast of white will be very important then. Contrast of light and dark, contrast of stronger colors, which we'll be meeting. Okay, lichen here. Means the area has a lot of lots of oxygen. Lichen enjoys that type of environment, loads of moisture. Just dabbing it a little. I'm not sure if I'll keep it that way. Just use a sponge and lift it for now. It just breaks it too much. I might need to sacrifice my lichen or keep it much more settled in darkness. Right, I haven't done anything to my mountains at the back, so let's have a look at them. And I think that's good go with some lovely blues. I quite like to introduce fresher ultramarine. And let's see what's going to happen. But it's need to be quite dark. Okay, so ultramarine as fresh as we can get it. Tiny dab of black, so to make it slightly stronger in tone. Okay, if it becomes more gray, it means I might have overdone the black. So let's start the process again. Fresh ultramarine and less black. And let's I think the darkness here is good. Very much character type of shape for the glitters. Okay, it's reflecting a little, but it has got a nice sharp silhouette. It will dry shortly. Let's put some of that continuation of the color across. I'm dabbing the strokes, not because I'm not sure or trying to avoid the trees. I'm looking if this blue is working well with the violets behind. I quite like some of the violets. The blue looks a little flat at the moment. Maybe the violet gray will come to support it, so then the blue will stay more powerful. I'll have more grayish corners here. We'll have a look. Little crimson gets it much more violety quicker. Right, so I'm happy with the greens. I can go over, can touch the greens up at any point. I'm more now focused on the mountain. Okay, and this edge of the mountain has more violety warmth. But like that, it looks too warm, so I need that coolness. So it's a bit of that combination. And maybe this is an opportunity for me to raise the silhouette of the mountain. I've got this darker color. So some of these could go slightly darker and some could stay more violety. That's a nice contrast. Right, let's go for the raising tip. Okay, that's too dark. It comes out as a nice contrast, but it doesn't need to be dark. Or super dark at least. And then even more lighter version of that color. So that fogginess will be there. And tiny bit more. And we've got one slightly sharper contrast. Another one blends in. Okay, and now this end, I can just about see it. Okay, now just adjust other shapes here. For example, this blue now is too strong or too strong, too quickly. Quite like that white fluffy edge here. Well, the paint underneath is wet. That smudge looks quite a nice soft border. More of the dark. Okay, let's do strong. Strong and blue. Right, adding a warm color behind the fog is not a good idea because fog and extra water, rain, smoke, anything that cools things off. So my thought of a warmer segment shown through is not such a good one. Brush white. I want to shape this edge. Excuse me. Right, now that is a little sharper edge. And maybe I just need to let it dry. Okay, that's mountain is disappearing now. I'm shrinking it. And this one to stand out. Could have something slightly light over it. I think I maybe exaggerated its size. Okay, I'm gonna let this area to dry so I can cover some of the edges and bring some of the darkness back. Okay, just looking at how the whole image works with distant mountains, with what's happening in the foreground with the water. Have quite a large, big, dark area here. And I'll remove the big chunk of a stone here, but does read better. So I might do something in between as a lower. Okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 with similar shapes. So let's break them down. So loads of exciting details here for me today. Let's find some highlights on this foreground rock, well, middle ground. Again, there is light on part of it, but also part of it dictates, well, the lighter segments dictate what grows on it. So it's partially the geological formation, partially lichens, partially light. So quite complex thing to look and to paint. At the same time, very exciting. Okay, I think that works well. I'll have some more of the similar light. And maybe it's time I start working into some of the highlights on tops of some of the rocks. Some of them will have lighter, just corners, just borders. Just some of the ridges, some things happening in the form. Something just catches in that texture. So without the supportive darks I've done earlier, that would have been quite hard to achieve. Sharpens up as well the spaces, and it's also allows me to see where I can put some extra highlights in the water very shortly. Some of the strokes I've been using are a little watery, so it might dry slightly lighter, so slightly darker, because it's against the darker backgrounds. I can also use this color, this purpley gray, pinkish gray, for parts of the water. I said I'll be using some turquoisey colors, but also a little bit of pink. So then it's that variety of color is building up naturally, because it's a color on the rocks, it's a color on the water. We see the rocks underneath of the water. The water reflects on top of the rocks. Okay, my greens are floating at the moment when the water and the rocks becoming more three-dimensional. So I need to pay a bit of attention to my greens shortly. But all the stones developing so good, I want to keep going for a bit longer. All the colors are working. Okay, there isn't a light there at the back of the mountains, but I think that will work. Otherwise, one ridge of the mountains doesn't change as much to another. I think that looks stronger. Okay, not sure about that. Okay, I'm still not too sure what's happening with that mountain. It's need to stand out more. Okay, right, let's do tiny bit more highlights on the water. I think I'm ready for that. Clean brush. I'm enjoying using the square flat brush. It's almost a square. Yeah, the bristles are the same length as their widths. And let's top up some white. So I have some fresh white on my brush. And I did want some turquoise. So emerald green is here. I need a tiny piece, tiny drop of it, mixed with phthalo blue and some fresh white and some very pale turquoisey color. That's black. Okay, that's about right. Okay, tiny bit more darker. This color could be there as well, but I think it's good to do with tiny bit darker as well tone. Okay, while I have it, let's use some of it as a fresh color. Maybe similar darkness. Maybe that's will do the trick. Let's bring some of that trickle of light. Now I can use now slightly diluted paint because I could work with much more spontaneous marks. So it's diluted pale color, and when it dries, it's not going to be as sharp and bold as it will appear while it's still wet, which will soften my super strong light, but will keep that bubbliness in the water. Okay, so I'm looking forward to see how it will dry and stay a tiny bit darker. So that's, I think it's quite a nice green. I can go for a tiny bit more darker turquoise. Okay, that's very dark, but if I'll keep mixing it with some white, some of these darker grays. Darker grays means darker turquoise. Okay, my white keeps coming out from the roots of the brush. And to make the water slightly more vibrant in its color, if I'll add a dab of black and white. White will make it lighter, black will make it not just darker, but less fresh. It'll have a tiny bit of dullness to it, so then this fresh turquoise is not too jumpy, surrounded by grayish violets and grayish blues and grayish subtones. And I'm not going to put it everywhere. I'm going to put it maybe somewhere here in the middle ground. Okay, it just looks a little bit too even everywhere. Let's calm it down a little. To neutralize it, I'm adding some violet, and it just makes it back to bluey gray. Okay, that's more settled. So it needs to be there, but not as strong. It could be there again, back into the correct darkness, because some of the darkness became too light. So I'm constantly adjusting, playing with the color, adjusting, making evaluations, making those judgments. Okay, that's a medium tone. It's back, so some highlights will need to come there as it dries. I think I slightly overlighten this corner. I didn't dry dark. Oh, I haven't given it enough time to dry dark. Now, the more lighter tones I put on the water, the more stronger and lonely some of the darker shapes of the rocks become. And they're asking for some extra texture, maybe subtone of dark. I can see some of these foreground rocks could have a bit of lichens, maybe in some of that darker violet tone, which will be slightly lighter on top of the rock. Might just have some of the white or just enough white. I'm using white and a tiny dab of turquoise. So if I needed some extra highlights, I can do them right at the end. But this is probably as light as I've got it so far. Yeah, on the screen it's very white. Just extra highlights here. Sometimes we have very light strokes really close to the dark rocks. Would have thought underneath we would have something much darker with our shadows, but that's a spray of water which comes over the darker silhouettes. So there's no shadow. The shadow is somewhere way below. Well, if there is any, because everything is just moving. And let's find the edge of it here. Okay, that's still a slightly wet area I was talking about. And something close here. There will be more shadows there. But then here it's all running through. And again, some little horizontal pools, little steps. And again, water continues running. I just go a tiny bit higher. Okay, so still wet area, so I have slightly uneven strokes because the brush doesn't allow me to work smoothly. A bit more water. I don't want any dry brushing. And let's have a look where this water will be getting into the river. Okay, somewhere there. Okay, then I'll be ready for the trees. Just don't have that little bit more extra glistening effect. Start to be quite soft, like an oil paint in here. Oh, I wanted to do those rocks as well. There's a little violet color. Okay, that's looking good. Okay, the water is looking lovely now. Right, so some more darkness for them. Warmth but darkness for the rocks. So I'm mixing a bit of warm colors. That similar to my original violet color. Yes, probably like that. Let's have a look. And just do some pattern work. Some very distinctive. I think this rock I painted a number of times in the past from slightly different angles. It has very distinctive patterns, almost like certain whales or which will have certain sea mammals which will have their markings on their backs. That's how they get recognized. So some of these stones, so well known, been painted and drawn and admired and researched. Okay, maybe too much light. Oh, that looks better already. So I want to have some familiarity with it, with texture. Rock is a rock, yeah, but if it's such a connection, if there is such a connection with it, it's only worth to pay attention to it. And it also does work for my piece here. It does break some of that overly dark surface, makes it slightly gentle, more pleasing to the eye as well. It's quite dark. I want to keep it reasonably dark. Maybe just break down some of this solid dark. I haven't quite finished all of the corners here. I can see now, I can see that the color is not reflecting, that I haven't covered all the background surface, and some of it is in big chunks left. That's better. I think some of this warmth here as well would be good. And the stone, a few still nuances I can play with. For example, how the water comes to this rock, quite shallow. I can have some to show the wet patches on it. The depths, how the rock opens up. Okay, it's a little wet for you to see here. That change. And also maybe this one could have slightly more dark now. That's it, that's better. And even this one, I wanted to make a tiny bit more darker. Again, it's slightly, not slightly, it is reflecting a lot for you. So just be with me. As it dries, we'll see it better. Right, greens. Let's touch up my lovely greens. I might need a different palette here. Right, so I mixed some of the greens, kind of more yellowish greens, some more darker, kind of semi-hookers green, a bit more reddish green, and then I went more into the orangey, reddish colors, and started adding them to my left-hand side, and it's immediately, yes, lands in the right place. It's grounds it. It becomes much more exciting. If I'll use small amount of this lighter tone above, then we suddenly feel we can walk there. Yeah, maybe less red, more green, but maybe not as light as that. So we don't want everything being too orange there. That's nice. So it's that range. It's that lovely range. And when you walk in those type of environments, the Lake District, the Wales, some of the Welsh valleys, Scottish, beautiful landscapes, and you look further ahead of you, and you see, oh, this is lovely green grasses. Oh, it must be a very, can't be soggy and wet environment. But from a distance, looks nice and lovely. We come close, and your boots are getting wet, and everything is becoming not as lush green as it looks from a distance. But it's that light catches, and that's how it starts playing drama. Right, what I'm doing here, I see some of the branches of the tree. I'm not quite sure what that tree is. Just looks something where that tree trunk, I don't know where the branch is, how it spreads. What I can see is kind of the foliage coming out from the top right corner towards me. So I'm using it, some of the groups of the leaves, some of the individual leaves on top of my existing greens. Again, that helps so much. Right, let's go for a tiny bit more darkness here. On its own, that's not going to work. So green and a dab of red. I want to have a bit more darkness. Okay, still not enough. I want to show the depth of the tree. lean into the rock, so that's better depth now. So I'm going from far distance darknesses slowly to lighter. Okay, that's too quick jump of light, but I can put it a little bit more here now. And let's put a tiny bit of the darks as well. So again, I'm grounding the trees a bit more now, far back. Okay. Dab of blue and sorry, green and violet. Want to offset the two groups of trees here. And then that's could be coming together right. And now this tree could have some extra highlights on top as well. It doesn't come out as bold, but let's gently increase its light. And while it's wet, it's quite nice to apply and smudge into it. So then there is a little definition, but it's not as strong as something here. You can see some of that sharp texture of the rocks might be too strong. Just brings it too close to us, but softening it might be best. Just offset things. Something at the back. Maybe I'll soften some of those shadows. Maybe some of these leaves will slowly start to come up. Okay, quite a lot of darks here. Maybe part of that will be covered in that vegetation. Right now I need to pick up my small brush to do my tree trunk. I'm gonna have some blue and violet and some black. The plan is that one end might have a bit more violet, one end will have more blue, and that tree trunk is not going to be just solid. It's one where that it will reflect a little bit of color there. So let's make the tree to come alive. Okay, let's check that position. I think I'm gonna go for it here. And I can add more leaves to support that shape here. Okay, now it's can spread out its branches. A bit more quirky, a little bit more awkward. It's been growing in such conditions. It's as long as it survives and clings somehow. It's got that strength, almost like a Chinese brush painting type of quirky lines. Same here, I might just add a hint of light there so they're not solid black. They appear and disappear into the greens. These branches, these silhouettes. Yes, there's a bit more tension to it. I will need to adjust the water around it because it's too light. Against the blacks tree trunk. So there might need to be some subtle change of darkness. Sorry, of light. That's better. Doesn't mean that I can't have some highlights around it, but it will be just easier to read for the eye. Not so bold jumps. It is reasonably far away in a distance. Right, and let's bring some more of the leaves now. So somewhere here we're going to have some extra leaves. Okay, so let's have some of that green and orange. I really liked that reddish orange over here, so let's just bring something similar to top up the edge. Might be some other tree. Okay, so this one is spreading its leaves, slightly darker ones further down. Maybe they still, not just in the shadow, but they still keep their pigment, their autumn pigment is still strong. And the outer leaves have very little color left, green left. Okay, now I like that tree, but it's too full, it's too bodied. So if I'll bring some of the color of the mountains at the back, usually we paint little gaps of the sky, and here I can do little gaps of the mountains and maybe just shape it. That looks like a different tree now, that's good. And I can bring some of the branches a little over, and that's when I can add again a little bit of extra gaps for the water, for the branches. Sorry, between the branches. So I have a few brushes on the go. Okay, so my whites are a little too similar, dotty. Okay, better. Now I lost some of the greens. Okay, let's bring the greens back. Okay, now I'm missing a little bit of shadows at the back. Looks like some of the rocks need a little bit of ground in there as well behind, especially some of these darks. Just tells us that something needs to stay slightly lighter. That continues now, yeah. Couple of more strokes and I'll be stopping. Just some of these highlights might have an extra warmth in them. Okay, maybe a bit too strong and warmth, but let it settle them down. I can touch it up. Let's put a couple of more whites on the water. As they're dried, that's become perfect timing to start adding those little flicks, little dots, little lines. As finishing touches. Where the white just flows. And glistens. I think there's still quite a bit of things to work on, but I'm seeing more and more clearer of how the image is going to be finished. Two lighter strokes for my trees as well, so now the white is competing with this tree. And tiny bit more here as well. That's it. Something's going on. Because I'm working on one end place, it's that light comes through another, and it just makes the whole piece united. Let's stop at that for tonight. Thank you so much for being with me, and I'll show you when the painting is finished. I'll get back to you, and thank you for watching.